and welcome to the latest edition of the Leadership Untitled podcast, the show that brings together experts to talk about all things leadership, coaching and learning and development, all those great things that hopefully will help you improve your own learning skills, including avoiding the mistakes that me and my guests have made ourselves. This time my guest is Adele Bradley, a senior OD manager with a passion for coaching that just radiates through everything that she says. That passion also includes fighting upwards, managing those above her to really invest and understand the benefits and value and impact of coaching, as well as actually coaching supervision itself, who supports the coaches. So, great conversation. I cannot wait to share this with you. So please join me in welcoming Adele to the show. Hi Adele, welcome to the Leadership Untitled podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. It's Friday. How are you, Rob?
It's Friday. Well, you know, Fridays don't quite hold the same amount of fear as they did when I worked in corporate, but still, it's nice to get to the weekend.
Well, this week's just flown by, literally flown by, and I'm going out for pizza with my friends tonight, so it's a nice way to finish off the week. They do these dough balls. You've never tasted anything like it in your life. I could just order the dough balls on takeout and just sit and just be happy for the rest of my life.
That's it. I mean, we've got to sit down and talk for an hour now, considering we're both starving for pizza and dough balls. That's not a great start. My stomach's rumbling.
Well, I've got an apple, if that makes you feel any better. You want that?
That's really not scratched the itch. It really hasn't. So anyway, I'd love to start off just by kind of going why it is that I've invited someone to come onto the podcast, and just to give listeners a bit of context, really. And obviously we know each other. We've chatted a few times, and the reason I wanted you to come along on here is because there's a passion you show for coaching. Specifically as well around the leadership coaching side of things, but there's lots of people that show passion for coaching, lots of people will talk you about what the benefit of it is and why it should be used and what the organization can get from it, all that sort of stuff. And quite often what knocks people back from actually growing that in an organization is that kind of senior leader buy-in, the resource support, the money, the time, the investment in it, all those sort of things, and they get knocked back and they don't go for it. But chatting to you, I kind of got that impression that, you know, that's not going to happen. That you get no, that just spurs you on to go, okay, let's see, let's go again. And this time I'm going to do it twice as hard. It's a little bit like Andy Dufresne in Shawshank Redemption, writing loads of letters to get the library. Every time he just didn't get an answer, he wrote 2 more letters. So that's why I wanted to get you on here, because, you know, I think that's a big thing. I'm obviously sold on the idea that a big part of leadership development and enabling leaders to be even greater at the jobs that they're doing is coaching support, them to coach and also them to be coached. That barrier that actually brings it alive in organizations is real. So that's why I brought you on today. So I guess, you know, let's kick things off and how did you get involved? How did your passion for coaching actually come along in the first place?
It stems from about 10 years ago when I was working for a contact centre, quite a large insurance company, and we were looking at making them lean. And we brought in McKinsey to give us lean training, and part of that was coaching training. And they upskilled us to go coach team leaders, to coach leaders around the business. But informal coaching, it was never formal coaching. It was like, how do you coach in the moment? Mm-hmm. And I started practicing it. I started teaching it. And I saw the impact it had when it was done and done well. And that's how I really got into it. And then I really kind of got into it in the last few years when I got the opportunity to do my ILM7 in executive and CEO coaching. I was offered the opportunity to do that qualification about 3 years ago now in the organisation that I work for. And I thought, right, okay, yeah, let's do it. So I started doing that, and it completely reignited my love for it, because I think it had tapered off a little bit, the coaching, because you do it so informally. And going through that process and that structure really reignited my passion and helped me remember why I started it in the first place and what I loved about it. But not only that, it ended up spurring me on to make loads of changes within our organisation. So doing that qualification really was the catalyst for me. And I think there was a moment during that qualification where we had to undergo supervision. And that for me was fundamentally a life-changing moment. That's when everything changed for me in that moment. And what happened, if you don't mind me explaining it to you,
Yeah,
Rob,
go for it.
I'd been coaching as part of the formal qualification. I had some coaches in the workplace and then some coaches out of the workplace. And this particular person that I was coaching was outside of the workplace.
Yeah.
She had gone through university and then straight out of university created her own company. And at this point, I was really new in kind of doing my formal qualification and wanting to kind of follow the process and do it correctly. And we were sat down one day in a hotel coaching, and she was telling me about an experience where one of her members of staff had spoke to her quite degradingly. And in that moment, when she was telling me about it, what I said to her in response was like, "Oh my God, as if you'd let somebody speak to you like that. That's not okay. Like, I'd never let anybody speak to me like that." Now, in my head, that was really supportive and helpful. But her attitude changed towards me as soon as I said that, and I couldn't understand why. So I took it to supervision, and this is where my life changed, literally. And everything about coaching just seemed to click into place and make sense. But until that moment, it hadn't quite clicked and gelled for me. So I went into supervision. I explained what had happened, and we did a little coaching session around it. And it turns out, and this was the moment when everything kind of clicked into place, that I'd judged her based on me. So what I'd done is when she was telling me that story, rather than saying to her, "How did that make you feel?" I reacted like it had happened to me. I made it all about me. It was about my judgment, the way I've been brought up, the way that I would feel if someone spoke to me like that, the way that I would behave. And that's not what coaching's about. It's nothing to do with me. And in that moment, I learned that I'd been judgmental, seeing things from a different lens, not making coaching about me. You know, when everything just crashes into place and you just have that moment, you just go, "I get it. I get it now. Everything makes sense." And the second that realization happened, everything changed for me after that. I was like, I understand coaching in its entirety and I get why we're doing it, and everything makes sense. So I'd say it was about 3.5 years ago that all clicked into place for me officially and made me the coach that I am today.
It's a great insight. It reminds me of one of my favourite TED Talks, Celeste Headley, 10 Ways to Have a Better Conversation. And one of the ones is around don't compare your experiences with others.
Yeah.
And it's the one that when I kind of talk through those 10, and I'll put a link in the notes for anyone who wants to go and look at it. It's exactly what you've said there. That's the one that jumps out and people go, whoa, hang on a minute. Why is that a bad thing to compare experiences and tell them about the time that I went through that, or how I would react to that, or what I would do about that based on my experiences? It's like, it's never the same. It's not about you. It's about them. You could have gone through exactly the same thing at exactly the same time with exactly the same people, but your reactions and feelings are personal about it.
Exactly.
And if you preempt that or predict it, or like you said, judge it, then you're absolutely not listening. You are just kind of filtering your own thoughts into the conversation.
Yeah, and you're not being a true coach. And I've got a book coming out this year, and I've written about that in the book, that if you have been through this exact same situation as someone else and you've got over it, and you think the other person should get over it because you've got over it, that's quite abhorrent, right? Because you're not that person. You don't feel the way they feel. You don't process things the way they process it. So it's not a great way to kind of bond with anyone on a basis of telling someone to get over it. So for now, no matter what anybody tells me about their experiences, I just remain curious. I don't even bring my own thought perception into it because it's got nothing to do with me and everything to do with them. So fundamentally life-changing, to be honest, Rob.
And that's kind of really interesting thing, because from a learning background, you'd obviously done lots of coaching before that, and you were obviously a big fan of coaching before that, and obviously you were doing very formal kind of training and learning pieces around it through the ILM course. But it was getting back to the basics of having two people having a conversation with a coach supervisor that brought that to ignition, I guess. So just how important is it just in the workplace to, training's there, but these personal conversations, what is the impact that they are having in your organization?
Exactly that, right? So you can put all the processes you want in place, and you can, your frameworks and everything, and do all the training that you want. And I'll talk a little bit about how we observe people that come through our coaching academy. But Those conversations is where the magic happens. And a coach's job is to own the framework. The coachee's job is to drive the relationship.
Mhm.
And when I say by owning the framework, we're in charge of the timings, the flow of the conversation, but not controlling it, but making sure that we move through that coaching model to achieve an outcome, and we can pin that outcome down rather than talking for 45 minutes about how somebody's kids are or how your grandma is, because you can get easily caught up in that with people. I have coaches come on and they go, and it's like, we could go in 25 different directions, but it's like, what's important to you to get out of this call? But other coaches I've observed, they just they pick on the last sentence that somebody said and then they want to talk about that. So they might have downloaded for 15, 20 minutes and they'll concentrate on the last sentence rather than saying, you've downloaded a lot of information there. Do you want to reflect back to me the key points that are important to you today that you want to discuss? And that's the difference between a really good coach and someone who's just thinking about, they think they're a coach because they're listening to someone and asking some questions. There's a real key difference. And I think that the importance of having those effective conversations and being a good coach and leading them, the impact, well, it's just incredible. It's empowerment, it's trust, it's honesty, because the relationship that you have with your coach is everything. You have to trust your coach to be open, to be honest, to be vulnerable, to really trust your coach to get the best out of that coaching relationship. And that's why we do chemistry calls, right?
Yeah.
So we've introduced them in my organisation where I work because nobody wants to be put with somebody. That's your coach, go with them. What if you're great, like nails down a blackboard, right? It's not going to work. It's a personal preference. That person has to be right for you. As they say, chemistry call, the chemistry has to flow. So I always advise anyone that's picking a coach to pick 2 or 3 to have chemistry calls with, from reading their bios and then going right and having half an hour just to chat to them, and immediately you know if they're your person. And then when you pick that, then you start building the relationship. And trust doesn't come automatically. You don't think, right, I've picked my coach, I trust them implicitly. What happens is you start to build that through your contracting, and then maybe you have 1, 2, or 3 sessions. You can see the trust start to grow, but the coach has to be consistent. So I suppose to summarize your question, they are so important, but it has to be with the right person in the right relationship for the conversations to be really effective and work well in a coaching relationship.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's that I've had chemistry calls in the past where it's actually become very apparent that the person doesn't actually want coaching. They've kind of like been put in contact with you. I think I know, because I think sometimes we forget about the fact that, you know, we that have gone through these accreditations and these trainings and all these kind of life-changing moments to become where we are, we've done a lot of work on coaching and we understand a hell of a lot about coaching. Yes, we can still progress and develop ourselves, but then another person comes who's never really done anything with coaching. We sometimes just assume they know what coaching is and what mentoring is. What's the difference between the two? What's the difference between that and training and learning and all those sort of things? So sometimes it might be, well, what you actually need is a mentor, or what you actually need is, let's go away and get some training on a certain subject, or whatever it might be. You might want coaching alongside that. You might want coaching after that. It's weird sometimes. And that personal piece, you're absolutely right. The trust, I think, trust is too often looked at as kind of a binary thing of there's trust or there's not trust. And, you know, I encourage people listening to this to kind of think about trust in a slightly different way on that scale, that 1 to 10, to kind of go, well, where's trust at the minute and what can we do to build it? Because if we keep it as this little delicate thing that can always be broken, and once it's broken can't be rebuilt, then the tendency is not to try and stretch it, to not try and build it. It's more around how do we make sure we don't break trust.
Well, it's really, sorry, Rob, that's one of the really important things to talk about in your contracting, isn't it? You're doing a proper contracting conversation. One of the questions you can ask your coach is, what builds trust with you? You know, how can we form that effective relationship? What are your expectations of me? What are your expectations of you? But what I found as a coach is that not many people do contracting well. They just think, have a conversation. What do you want to talk about? What are your goals? Right, let's crack on. There's so much more to contracting. But that only becomes evident as you go through your relationship and you think, well, I didn't talk about that in contracting, so I can't hold them accountable for that. And we didn't talk about that. So again, learning and reflect, you know as well as I do, reflective practice is a key for coaches. Massive. So if you're doing your reflective practice right, your coaching, your contracting can only get better and stronger, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where the magic happens in that contracting, where you say, like, this is who I am as a coach. These are my expectations of you. What are your expectations of me? But they might not know at this stage. So going back to your point about people don't know if it's coaching that they need. What happens is I have a form at work, and it's called registering your interest to be coached. So when anybody comes to me, they get sent that, and then we go through it and we read what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And then we have a call with them. And usually I say, like, what are you looking for? Oh, I want someone to give me advice. I want someone to, like, tell me how to climb the career ladder. Well, a coach isn't going to do that for you. What you're looking for is a mentor, and it's our job to kind of upskill them about what they need and what they're looking for. But if they do have a clear goal, great, then we can move on to the coaching portfolio and doing those chemistry calls. But we're kind of the gatekeepers for anybody who says, I want to coach, because I hear it all the time, Rob, as you do. I'm coaching, but not you sat down telling somebody what to do or telling someone your opinion. You're not coaching at all.
Yeah.
So I see it as my job to kind of really educate everybody in the differences between coaching, mentoring, and counselling, because the line can get blurred very easily. And if you do a strong contract, it can though, can't it? Right?
100%.
You know what I do when you're coaching somebody, and I had this with the coachee. They were telling me all the right things that I wanted to hear, and I actually turned around and said to them, "Do you believe what you're telling me?" And they were like, "No, I don't." And I was like, "Why don't you believe it?" And it was something from their past that was holding them back from stopping them in believing it. So I took it to supervision, talked about it with my supervisor, went back to the coachee, and I was like, have you thought about exploring counselling before we can move forward? Because you can sit there and tell me all the right things all day long, but if you don't believe it, this is all pointless. So then she went off and had a bit of counselling. That solved the problem, and then we could really open the door for coaching. So it takes a confident coach to be able to identify that and to be able to stop that and have that conversation. Most coaches would just be like, oh, well, we'll just crack on.
And that's your contracting again, isn't it? Where does coaching start and end? If someone's going to think, well, yeah, you're actually going to give me the belief that I believe those things now. Well, not necessarily. We'll go through things, and as a result of that, you might start to believe in yourself more on certain things. But it depends what the root of it is. And you're quite right. It could be have you thought about some other route, some other things? When I first started coaching, receiving coaching and starting to try and coach, exactly that. The feedback I got was dreadful. That it was like, well, you are just doing one-to-ones, you're just doing performance chats. That isn't coaching. I'm like devastated because I'm thinking, this is going to be a nice little easy course to go on. So like all this feedback, put that into play. And, by the end of the program, I was like, how on earth did I think that was coaching?
Yeah.
At the start.
It was with the best intentions though, right, Rob?
100%.
You were doing a great job, you had good intent, you wanted to help people, but you probably had no one formally training you or guiding you, or no one saying to you, actually, let me check the quality of what you're doing. And it's only when somebody came to you and go, actually, if you're not doing this, you're doing that. It's that realization, isn't it? It's like if I hadn't gone to supervision about my judgment, I would have carried on being the same person. So it takes someone who's brave to go, come and observe me. See what I'm doing. Tell me, let's talk it through. And actually, am I on the right track or not? But you've got to be surrounded with the right people, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Otherwise, they'll just tell you what you want to hear.
So I would imagine that you, and with this amount of passion you've got and these learns that you've had along the way, these revelations, when you're trying to put this into play in a large company, as you are, to go, right, first of all, I'd love it to be accessible to everybody. I'd also love leaders to be embracing the style, this leadership style with their people as well. And I'd also like the investment in it from the company as a whole, the senior leaders, to push this down and make it available. What sort of responses, and particularly what sort of challenging responses as you had coming back as pushing back on that? Or have you been lucky, Adnan?
Oh, I'm going to talk for ages on this one because there's so many things to say. So it goes back right to the beginning of the conversation when we were talking about barriers. I have a mindset, and I don't know where it comes from, but I've always had it. Barriers don't exist in my world. Someone tells me no, that I don't hear that. That's non-compute. No. If someone says it can't be done, non-compute. I always think if there's a barrier in the way, get a bomb, blow it up, go underneath it, go over it, go around it. Whatever you need to do. There's always a way to do something, whereas most people will give up at the first hurdle. It'll be like a barrier. There's a barrier there. I can't go any further forward. I just see it as a challenge. Love it. I'm like, say what now? Let's go do that. I think when I first started all of this, when I wanted to bring coaching into the organisation in which I work, the first thing I did is I needed to present a strategy to the HR director to share my vision about what I wanted to achieve, because obviously I needed to get sign off.
Yeah.
came up with a bit of a 5-year strategy, just exactly like you said there. How can all levels get it? How can I influence people? How do I educate people what coaching is? How do I train people internally? How do I get internal coaches? Because at the time when I kind of put my head above the parapet and went, what are we doing with coaching here? We had all these random external coaches running around just doing whatever the hell they wanted. They were not being monitored or tracked or quality checked. They had no framework. So one of the first things I did was create a framework for all the external coaches to work to, and get rid of the not so good ones and keep the good ones. So anyway, I digress. So I put this 5-year strategy in front of my HR director, and I said, "This is my vision. This is what I think we can do." And she signed off the first 2 years, which was great. Brilliant. And the first 2 years was all about how we can create internal coaches through doing a coaching academy. And she said, you can do a couple of pilots, and the first pilot will be the people of my choosing, and the second pilot will be the people of your choosing. So the first pilot went great, and it was a lot of our HR colleagues that needed those skills, which was great. But the way I saw it is the second pilot was my kind of like my little playground. So it's like I had 12 spaces, and I knew I could invite 12 senior leaders. Now, if I've invited the right 12 senior leaders, not only would I educate them into what coaching was, show them the power and the impact coaching could have, they also got to demonstrate it and try it. And then they would have the seed planted to go back to, because they run teams of 300-400 people, these senior leaders. So that was my next strategy, was how do I then convince them to take 3 working days out of the business and come with me on a course for 3 days. So this is where influencing comes in. So, I don't like being told no, Rob. It doesn't come through.
That's coming across.
So I made it into a competition because I knew that some of our senior leaders were like, well, if they're going on that course, I want to go on that course.
Yep.
So I kind of sold it. It's like, I've got this coaching academy coming up. It's a pilot and I've only got 12 spaces and they're really sought after. And I think you would benefit from that. So I'm going to offer you first refusal. They were scrambling to get on it because I kind of made it into a little competition amongst a lot of people that were maybe in our sales or our kind of commercial arena. And so I ended up inviting 12 really senior leaders that all thought this was like the place to be. And I think they thought they were just going to come along for 3 days and be taught about coaching. Yeah. And what happened is you get indoctrinated in the 3 days. You get voodooed by me, whether you like it or not.
And whatever happens, don't say no to you during those 3 days, because it's just going to get more indoctrinated.
But the best thing about doing the pilot is I said there's no expectation for you to go on and be an internal coach. Just come along, experience it, and give me your feedback. That's how I kind of sold it. Yeah. But if you did want to be an internal coach, that opportunity may be available to you as well, if you want it. So pilot number 1 went really well with all our HR colleagues. Then we did pilot number 2 with very senior leaders from across the business. And I saw the transformation in that room in those 3 days, from them coming in and sitting there and thinking, I'm on this course and I'm going to be like the best. Yeah. To see that transformation of losing that ego, really opening up to what it did and the impact it had, the realization it wasn't about them and the impact it could have on their teams. And then literally, this is the best thing about it, Rob. I only had that one meeting with our HR director to put the 5-year strategy in front of her. And then off I went and I just cracked on. After the 2 pilots, she personally rang me up and going, Adele, I don't know what you've done, but these people won't leave me alone. They keep telling me how incredible the pilot was, how amazing it is, what they're going to do, all this coaching that they're going to try. She went, what did you do to them? I was just like, just introduce them to coaching, the actual real coaching of what it can do and the impact it can have. And so for me, that was let volume be your success. I didn't need to go around telling everybody, hey, I've done this, hey, I'm good at that. I had 12 senior leaders doing it for me, which is when started the movement. Because what happened is when the 3 other academies launched this year, they're all trying to get people on from their teams because they wanted to do it. And then what I also noted is a spike in coaching requests because the coaching academy was coming. So you could see the movement. And I had a colleague who'd gone off on maternity leave and she'd come back as all the coaching academies were happening. And she went, I can see the difference and I can feel it. And that's the thing about coaching, Rob. It's so hard to track on a monetary value because it saves time and it empowers people. And you really struggle to put a number on a spreadsheet. But if you can feel it, it makes all the difference, right? You can feel that movement. You can feel it. And that piece of feedback when she said, I've come off maternity and I can feel the difference, was just like, and the HR director calling me to say that everyone had been making noise and movement about what they'd been through. So I think the influencing bit is like, I'm a bit like a dog with a bone. I don't give up on stuff. Like, I'll harass you until you give me the right answer and not until you tell me to go away, leave you alone. But it's the passion that I believe it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I know it's the currency of leadership at the minute. I know how coaching works. If every single person in every organization had a coach, the potential that could be unlocked would be phenomenal, and all the companies would be excelling.
Yeah.
But we get into all really bad habits of command and control. Somebody asks you the question, you just give them the answer because you haven't got time, you want them to go away. We just spent a couple more minutes listening to understand, asking a few questions. Everyone would transform their world, but we've all got into these really bad habits.
So tell me more about those then. Tell me more about those, because I think that there is a combination of people maybe who just don't necessarily believe there are those benefits to coaching.
Yeah.
And there's some that maybe go, all right, yeah, I get there might be some benefits, but there's a bunch of things in the way, so I'm not going to bother with it. If we can see those benefits, why aren't organizations, not particularly yours, obviously, but why are organizations not all chomping at the bit to try and invest in it and embrace it like you guys are?
It's such a good question, isn't it? It's such a good question. I mean, the benefits are endless, but let's start with a few key ones. So often people don't have time to think. They're very busy in this, especially in 2023. It's people are stretched, they're busy, they're stressed about life, they've got stuff going on outside of life, prices going up, blah blah blah. We become very reactionary in work. We just become task focused. What do we need to do? How often do we give ourselves thinking time in the working day and go, right, I'm penciling out 3 hours to just think about what I'm doing now, where I want to go, what my strategy is? We don't often do that. So I've also started something called a thinking partnership, where somebody can just ring you up and talk out loud at you, just hear their thoughts, come in order. So a coach provides space to think, someone to listen to. I also find, Rob, I don't know if you find this, but sometimes when you speak and you hear your ideas or your thoughts come out your mouth, it sounds different and you get an idea just from having the opportunity to hear yourself talk.
Yeah.
Because we don't often sit in our offices and start talking out loud to ourselves about our ideas.
Sometimes I have a client who will just send me a WhatsApp, and that's done it because they've gone, I finally got it out of me. And you don't need to reply to that now, Rob, because me just sending you that's made me go, yes or no, that was a really brilliant or a ridiculous idea, or it sparked something else for me to think about. Well, it's inside. It can't grow. It's got a limit.
Yeah, and I'm a speak to think kind of girl, not a think to speak. I say, right, I'm just going to start talking and see what comes out. You ever hear that phrase? Like, some people will internalize it and they'll just go quiet and they'll think. Whereas I speak to think, so I'll just go, right, I'm just going to open my mouth and see what comes out and I'll figure it out. It's like a big messy ball of wool, right? And that's what the coach does. They take it and they go, right, this is what I've heard. Let me reflect back to you. So the first one is having the time to think and hearing your own thoughts.
Yeah.
I think the second one is just, it's in the empowerment that it gives you, right? So if you think about one of my senior leaders that I've been coaching, we talk about what he can do with his team and how he can do it. And through efficiencies, he might save 16 hours a week away from command and control by moving to a space of empowerment. So then he's got 16 hours a week that he can now concentrate on his strategy rather than going, what's the problem? Right, this is what you need to do to fix it by. And if he's spending 16 hours a week doing that, eventually that's always going to be 16 hours because people get into a routine of, I'll just ring my manager and he'll tell me what to do.
Yeah.
But if we go, right, okay, what's the situation? What are your options? So if you did option one, what would be the output? If you did option two, what would be the output? Okay, which option are you going to choose? That takes a few more minutes more to have that conversation. But that person on the other end then owns that action and is empowered to do it. Whereas if you told me the answer, I could blame you if it went wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
100%. 100%.
So I'm blaming you because you told me to go do it. There's no accountability. So empowerment, accountability, space and time to think, the ideas that you can have when all the noise is unplugged. So hearing your own thoughts. So we might have something in there, but we don't know we've got it in there until somebody asks us that question and it just sparks something.
Yeah.
So being actually able to hear your own thoughts as well and getting away from that constant reactionary, do it in the moment without thinking, processing, transactional way of working. I coach myself all the time now. It's great. But there, for me, the four main benefits: empowerment, accountability, having that space to think, and then hearing your thoughts.
Yeah.
But there's so many more. You know, there's loads more, but they're my top four.
Absolutely, and I love those. That kind of thinking time and that and the accountability really, really sort of reach out to me. That example I sometimes say to people: how many times could you maybe just like be sitting down or lying in bed, or you're having a shower, and suddenly a thought comes to you, or the name of that person in that band that you were trying to think of last night, and you couldn't, no matter how hard you tried. But suddenly you're not thinking about it. You're in the shower. Oh, it's him. That was the name of the person.
Because you've unplugged. You've unplugged from your phone, all the distractions around you. It's just you in the shower, and your brain kicks in and goes, "I've got space to think here. This is awesome."
And how empowering is that? Not just like for you as a person, but for you to empower your brain and go, I'm just going to switch off. You carry on doing what you need to do, brain. You give me a nudge when you've found the answer yourself, because it's in there somewhere. And we talk about things like chimp paradox and all that sort of stuff. Let the chimp just have a look in the little computer, see if it can find the answer, go and have a brew. Wait for it to come back to you.
That's the thing. This is one thing that I really like. It's like I do a lot of dog walks.
Yeah.
And I think a lot on my dog walks. If I'm not listening to an audiobook, I'll do a lot of like meditation and thinking. But if I've had a really hectic morning, there's been loads of meetings and loads of stuff talked about, and I've got no meetings in, I'll grab the dog and I'll go for a walk, and it helps me process everything, and it helps me figure it all out. And I know that I need that space, but not a lot of us ever give ourselves that time to do that and that processing of it.
Yeah.
And that's where we end up feeling stressed, feeling bogged down, feeling worn out, having anxiety, because we're not giving ourselves that time to process, think, and go, okay, so they said that, but what if we did that? Could we do that? What would be the output of that? Right, I'm going to capture that. And often on my walks, I'm often picking up my phone and sending myself an email, right, could do that, think about that, where's that gone?
Yeah.
And then you can have the best ideas, like you say, in the shower, out on a dog walk. You just get them and you just think, because I've unplugged.
I used to work with someone who always had a notebook next to his bed, because he said, I'll wake up in the middle of the night with an idea. I don't know whether I've been dreaming about it or what. I don't know what's going on. But just suddenly it'll come to me, and I have to write it down, because I know I'll forget about it in the morning. And I think, I think you're absolutely right. And one of the challenges with the way that work has gone over the last sort of 3-4 years now, with all the things that have been going on, is some of the opportunities for that have gone and some others have arisen, but maybe we haven't taken them. There's lots of people who say to me, now I reflect back, I don't miss the commutes. I don't miss all the big traffic jams and the 1-hour drives, all that sort of stuff. But that said, I actually do miss the hour I had between work and getting home, where I could just process the day and just be lost in my own thoughts, or empty them and listen to something on the radio that I wasn't really listening to, but it was on.
Yeah.
Missing it.
Yeah, it's those moments, isn't it, where you decompress, you process everything, and then that helps you when you walk in the door to be with your family.
Yeah.
Rob the family man, rather than Rob who's stressed out and anxious and stressed all about work and what's gone on and who said this and what meeting. You've processed it all.
You know me well then, Rob the anxious, stressed. That's me walking through the door.
And it's really interesting, because when you're working from home, I think what I do, it's really weird, because I will take the dog out for a walk after work, but before I do that, I have a shower to wash away the day as well. Because I feel like when you work from home, sometimes work can be all over you, and you carry, I might imagine it as a visual, you walk out your office, but you're still carrying work everywhere. So I do a visualization thing where I get in the shower and I wash my day away and watch it go down the plug hole, and then reset myself for my home, because you can have blurred lines between working from home and living in your home. So for me, that's a technique that helps me as well. Process the day, think about it in the shower, wash it, go down the plug hole, and then go on my dog walk, and I'm ready for the evening.
Love that. And just little things like, I'm one of those people. What was I on the other day? I was on a call, forget what it was. And everyone were kind of going, oh, I've got slippers on, I've got me I've got me flip-flops on, and I go, I can't actually. I don't know whether it's just I'm conditioned or whether it's for the reasons you're talking about. I have to be wearing a pair of shoes or a pair of trainers, even when I'm working at home and I'm on a work call, because it's just a thing for me. I'm going, why wouldn't I be dressed for work? I'm working. Whether that's kind of a throwback to the office or not, I don't know. But then that gives me that kind of moment when I go out and I'm back in the house, and I'm like, well, now I'm at home. I'm not going to walk around in like me nice jumper now and my trainers. I'm going to start getting chilled out. Oh, you've got what we got here. If you're on YouTube watching us, we're trying to get a flash of pink flip flops, I think.
I've got flip-flops and socks on because I've got like half dog walking gear on, half corporate gear on. That's how I dress for work. So wearing a jacket,
Individual,
right,
man.
it makes you feel like you're smart and you're in the office. I couldn't wear a hoodie.
Yeah.
Like some people wear hoodies on calls, but to me that's lounging on my sofa, chilling out in my own time. So it's like I get your shoe thing. It's like that with my jackets for me. Got to put a
Yeah.
jacket on, feel like I'm at work. But I don't
Have
mind
something.
socks. The slippers and socks are fine, right?
Yeah, have something, and especially, I'm lucky enough in the sense that where I sit, it's used to be the front third of my garage, so literally I can shut the door on it in an evening. It's a dedicated office space. But some people work at the dining room, and then like 5 minutes later, they're having tea on the dining room table that they were working on all day, and that in itself just doesn't give you that opportunity. So the things you're talking about, even more crucial. How can you inject that reflection time in your day? If you've got these people, then if you've got these senior leaders and these not so senior leaders coming at you in both directions, and they're going, Adele, I get it, right? I've now said no to you 5 times already, and I know you keep coming back like the dog with a bone, but I just haven't got the time. So let's say the leaders in the organization, I don't have the time. The pressures are too much. That command and control you keep talking about, that's all we've got the time to do. There's no time to step out of that sort of stuff. And at the same time, you've got senior leaders going, well, I get it. However, we haven't got the money or time to invest in that stuff. We need to focus on these results. We need to focus on the work and getting the most out of people. How do you convince them? That Dragon's Den moment, you think you're going to lose the investment. How do you turn it around? What do you say?
Well, I actually had that scenario, so I can give you the example of what I actually did in that situation.
Pens at the ready, everybody. Here's the blueprint.
So I haven't got time to think is a common statement. I haven't got time. I haven't got time. I haven't got time to think. And I this is what I did. It's very sneaky, but I like it. I read Nancy Klein's book called Time to Think. Have you read it?
No.
Oh, it's an incredible book, Rob. It's life-changing. The second you pick that book up and read it, you'll want to read it about 5 times. And Nancy Klein introduces something called a thinking environment.
Yeah.
For people who constantly say, I don't have time, I don't have time. So the first thing I say to people when they say to me, I don't have time, is I say, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. Do you want to make a change? Because you can continue to come to me and say, I haven't got time. But is that how you want to live the rest of your career and work life? Saying that statement, you are the only one responsible for changing that script. So you need to be the change you want to see. So I have that conversation first of all, because they've got to understand that what they're saying to me is, I'm going to carry on working the same way, and I want you to come and fix it. No, you've got to make a change that you're going to decide to work a different way so you do have time, right? So that's the first challenge that I talk about with them. Then the way this happened, so I was doing one of my pilots, and I had a senior leader, and he was like, I don't have time. Nobody has time in this organisation, blah, blah, blah. And I said, right, hang on a sec, come on. Can I suggest an idea to you? And he was like, yeah. I said, I've just read a book called Nancy Klein's Time to Think. And in it, she introduces something called a thinking environment. And I would wonder if we could pilot a thinking environment with your senior leaders. So this is a senior leader working in our sales department who's got lots of influential people that look up to him. And I said, why don't you read the book and why don't we co-facilitate it together? And you can show everybody how good you are. So a little bit of a hook in there. So basically challenged him to change the way that he thinks, and then said, let's do it together. Let's co-facilitate a time to think session, a thinking environment. And essentially, Rob, if you've never been in a thinking environment, all this stuff that you hear, don't have time to think, blah, blah, blah. So you have to make time for a day to do the thinking environment. And it's the way I call it, short-term pain for long-term gain. Because if you're not willing to give a day your time, how can I fix your problems? Yeah. Right, we're just going to continue the madness. Like, it's insanity, isn't it? Like, do the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. It's the definition of insanity. So we've got to do things differently, but you've got to be prepared to be the change that you want to see. So we do the thinking environment, we get everybody in a room, and I spend 45 minutes introducing the thinking environment and what it is. And essentially, Rob, is you don't interrupt anybody in the thinking environment. You're fully present. So you're not looking around, doodling, shifting in your seat, eye rolling. You are present and you respect everybody that speaks in that room and you listen to them. So essentially we had the sales team couldn't decide on sales commission. They've been kicking it around for 4 months. So I got them all in a room. I think there's about 12 of us. And I introduced the thinking environment concept. And then the question we put on the table is, what do we do about the sales commission? And you move around each person one by one.
Yeah.
Now, the very first thing we teach them at the thinking environment is how to breathe. And we do box breath breathing with them, because you want to interrupt, you start getting agitated and moving around in your seat because you've got something to say, right? So I always say, the second you feel like you want to interrupt someone, do your breathing exercises. Because if you interrupt somebody, what you're saying is, your words are important, my words are more important than you, shut up talking, I want to speak. That's what interrupting somebody does. And also, interestingly, Rob, when you read Nancy Kline's book, don't know if you've ever found this, but have you ever been in a conversation with somebody and they lose their word of what they're trying to think of? So they go, blah, 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 and this happened, and and they go, what's the word? What's the word? And we jump in there and we give them a word. You ever done that?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Do you think you're being helpful?
Well, yeah, I think we're being helpful.
Yeah. So what we're doing when that situation occurs is, you can't think quick enough. I can think quicker than you. My word's better than your word. But 9 times out of 10, it's not the word they were ever looking for. But we make an assumption because they're not speaking quick enough. So we jump in. So we're not allowed to finish anybody's sentence off, and we're not allowed to interrupt. So what happens is, they talk about what they think about the subject in my hand. Now, what's really, really more interesting in the thinking environment is, when you're in a meeting and your name is called or it comes to you, your automatic response is, you have to speak. You have to start talking, right? It's not like that in the thinking environment. If you want to sit there for 5 minutes and just think, you can think. Then you can speak, or you don't even have to speak. So it moves to you. Then you can talk, you can think, you can do whatever you want. No one's allowed to rush you. Everyone's paying attention to you. Everyone's giving you eye contact. Everybody's listening to what you're saying. And then when you feel like you're finished and you've got everything out, you can tap the table and say, I'm done. Or you can go, right, I'm ready. And then it moves to the next person. And so what everybody's doing is, they're all listening to everybody's points of view. They're all making notes. And then you go around a second time where they pick up on everything that everybody else has had to say. And usually by that second time, that second round, they've come to a conclusion, or you can see the consensus or the trend or the theme. And it was really interesting, because when we piloted with the sales guys, they've been kicking around the sales commission for 4 months. It was resolved in 4 hours in a thinking environment. Because you have the space and the time to think, rather than an email here and a quick meeting there, and we invited this person can't make this meeting. You get it done in that time, in that space. And I'm doing one in a couple of weeks, actually, for our commercial finance team, about who they want to be in their brand within the business. And it'll be a really positive experience. Some of them can be quite dark, depending on what the subject is, but sometimes the subject needs to go on the table, right, to be talked about. So, in answer, it's a very long-winded answer, Rob, but in answer to of how I do that is, I challenge their thought process as a leader. I invite them to read Nancy Kline's Time to Think book, because if you always do what you've always done, and you're always busy and you're always running from meetings, nothing's ever going to change. So read that book, and then I go host a thinking environment with them, with a particular subject that they've got in mind. And then they realise there's a different way to work, and they can't use that excuse anymore, I don't have time to think. So that's one way of doing it.
I love that, because that kind of leads to that thought of, well, wow, I don't have time not to do this anymore. I use this analogy of going, sometimes it's too much. If I'm trying to get my young lad to eat more veg, I've got a couple of options. I can put all the veg on his plate and go, eat the veg, and we all know where that leads. Or we'll blend it all up, whiz it all up into a sauce, never tell him it was in. He goes, that was a lovely curry. And then tell him, oh, well, you've had all that. And that's that feeling of, I sense you've almost got there with those senior leaders going, I could just tell you to go and do coaching. And you know what? A lot of coaching training does that. There's the benefits. This is why you should care about it. This is how you do it. Go on. And yeah, all right, I get it. I know all this veg is good for me, but I ain't got time for it. It's getting in my way. I can't do it. However, I've whizzed it all up. You're starting to feel better about yourself. You're getting the benefits of it. You go, I need to carry this on. Crafty. I liked it. It's crafty. You have to be crafty.
Well, you have to know your audience, right? I know that I haven't seen those ones that I've got close relationships within our organisation. I know how they work and how they think, because I've spent a lot of time obviously analysing them, working with them, coaching with them. And I always think, how could I get the hook into this? What do I need to do to get them to see things a little bit differently? And so it always starts with challenging that same thought process that they have. If they constantly hear, I haven't got time,
Yeah.
I'm there challenging them right in front of it. Like,
Yeah.
okay, talk to me about this. And what I found now is because they've gone through the academy and they're all kind of qualified internal coaches. I think I had about all of them come through that first pilot and want to be a coach. Is that they're now coaching people from around the business and they're having a positive impact on them and it's creating a ripple effect.
Lovely.
So they don't actually even say to me now, I don't have time to coach. They make it part of their daily like work routine, for want
Yeah.
of a better word. They see you know as well as I do, Rob, when you have a really successful coaching client, you buzz off it.
Oh, yeah.
You're happy for them, you chuff for them, you buzz in that they've got where they need to be. But also when that coachee turns around and they go, you've changed my life. And I go, I haven't changed your life. You changed it. I just helped you get there.
Yeah, 100%. I
And
absolutely love that. This bit here that you can see it on YouTube, the mindset, tool set, skill set, which I talk about a lot. That's what you've just done. It's like you could have gone, let's invite all the senior leaders for a day to train them how to coach. Now, not all of them would have turned up, if any. And if they did, it probably wouldn't have lasted beyond the classroom. But what's actually happened is you've challenged the mindset. You've got them to try and think about it a different way. You've given them a tool set to actually explore that they then look to repeat. And then they've come to you and gone, I want to learn more about coaching and being a coach, and bang,
boom,
straight onto
boom.
the ILM. But if you'd have just put an ILM brochure in front of them to start with, they'd have gone, what? No, I've got time for that.
And this is the thing, right? So I think a lot of people think when they're bringing a concept into the organisation, they've got to ram it down someone's throat and go, this is new and you've got to do it. And people reject it. The way I see influencing is me and you are on a journey together. And it's about knowing your audience, knowing how to approach each individual leader differently, knowing how it's quality as well, Rob, right? Because if I hosted an academy and it was shockingly bad, they're not going to buy into it, are they? Like the quality's got to be there, but it's all around identifying what issues they're struggling with, finding a little bit of a niche of how you can help them. And if you do solve that problem, they're going to trust and rely on you. And then you build that relationship and you go, right, there's something else I'm bringing in. Do you want to try this? And then you become their go-to partner. That has taken fundamentally about 3 years to kind of get there with that. But that's from determination and resilience, like dog with a bone, don't like to give up. But I have been fundamentally driving this because I know the positives that it will bring, and they're starting to see it. It's a slow journey though, right? You've got to be committed. You've got to fight your cause. You can't be ramming things down people's necks. They've got to believe it's their idea or be bought into the idea and understand the benefits it brings for them. Because there's always the what's in it for me, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm doing this for senior leaders, it's got to be what's in it for you. I'm going to tell you what's in it for you. And then you just plant. I call it going gardening, Rob, right? I plant seeds.
Yeah.
And so what I do is I'll go up to people and I'll ask a question or say something. I'll go, right, that's a bit of a seed planted. And I'll go over here and plant that seed. Then I might go back and water it a little bit and go back and water it a little bit over there. And I do it a lot with my leaders around the business. I go, I'm just going to put a call in. We'll have a catch up. Have 10 minutes, see how things are going. But there's always this strategic edge to it. Yeah. There's always something that I'm just wanting to see how something's landed or what it's doing or get the lay of the land or understand the trends and the themes that are going on around the business so I can identify opportunities to bring in more new things. If you get an incentives and you push this big campaign and try and ram, it's never going to embed. People are going to go, oh, it's just another thing that the company have brought in. It's just another thing. But if you integrate it slowly and slowly and slowly and keep talking about it and building on it and building on it and building it, that's where you get your traction. That's what I believe anyway, fundamentally.
And how many things fall into that bracket? How many times have I heard people talk about not just coaching, but anything like well-being and diversity and inclusion or whatever it might be, being brought in like a hammer from the top of this is what we need to do, as opposed to trickling it through the organization. And you talked earlier about that feeling of accountability, wanting to awaken accountability in people to want to own these things and want to do these things. I think what I like to say is, based on what you've just said, is that you're awakening the feeling of responsibility in people of it. That people suddenly think, well, hang on, this isn't now just Adele's baby that's she's trying to push on us all and asking us to babysit for half an hour every week and have coaching conversations with people. Actually, it feels a little bit like my baby as well now. And maybe I've had my own little coaching baby, and I need to look after it and nurture it and make sure it's the best it can be. I'm not babysitting anymore. I'm responsible, and that makes you feel more accountable at the same time.
You're so right. It's because I've got, I think, 4 of my coaches are now doing formal qualifications, and one of them's doing their ILM7, inspired by the coaching that they've been through. And that is making me so proud, because now I'm gone back to my boss and I've gone, right, I've got people who are now qualified in the business. What do we do with our qualified coaches? So they can be onboarded to be an internal coach. They don't need to go through the academy because they've already done the qualification. But then it's like, how do we use these qualified coaches and these coaches that are coming through the academy? And our next step is we've got loads of talent programs that where we're coming through. We're making coaching part of that as BAU, whereas before it was never integrated into that. So we can use people from around the business that are coaches, qualified coaches or academy coaches, match them with senior leaders that are going through talent programs, and they've got access to a coach. Again, it creates a movement. They've never had coaching before. They're getting it internally in-house from our qualified or accredited coaches, and they then see the benefit of that, and that creates another ripple effect. So imagine, you get like a paintbrush and you splat it like that, and the marks go everywhere. I feel like when you just do something once and you go like that, and it just creates that ripple effect, and people go, oh, I see that. And like you say, they all own it and they want to be part of it. And I have people coming to me going, Adele, can I get involved with this? Adele, can I get involved with that? And I'm like, hell yeah, you can. Let's do it. So I'd ideally like to grow the team. I'd like to have, my vision for the organisation is to have a dedicated coaching team, looking after our internal coaches, looking after all the coaching relationships, looking after our external coaches, monitoring the quality, the processes, all the foundations and the framework. That would be my next vision of putting a business case together, going, I want a dedicated team looking after this. Because you have to align with the organisation's objectives. And luckily for us, we're people focused. So I'd like to see where that would come into fruition if it aligns with what the company wants to do. So there is lots more that I could do. I said to my boss, if you had more people, I'd be dangerous, right? I really would, because I could
please tell me you didn't say no, because we know what follows.
Well, I put a meeting in his diary for June to design a business case. I can ask for more people, so he knows now. He's got a deadline.
Excellent. He's probably already signed it off for June. No, he'll know that's coming.
Yeah, he knows exactly what I like, and he knows that I'm a dog with a bone. So he'll be like, "Oh shit."
I love that. There's that visual you just kind of painted in my mind. Then that kind of splattering the paint over the wall. It really sings to what you said earlier. This idea of you talked about when you talked about running it as a pilot and then just trying it out. It was you started a movement of coaching rather than just trying to implement coaching. And so many of us, what we'll do is if you kind of keep your analogy sort of front of mind there to go, let's just stand in our sort of office and splatter that paint splat on the wall. And yeah, the dots might fire around the organization, but there's not a massive impact, and they probably stop there. You might get the odd person who go, oh, I'd love to join in with that, and what you're doing there. And you do get that. We get little advocates around the business. But what we really need then is for them to stand where those splats have landed and then go and do their own. And send that around, and suddenly you get enough of those. I guess the whole wall starts to get painted as opposed to just around your office. That really kind of, I think that's a great analogy to start thinking about that. How do we influence other people to want to influence this as well, as opposed to how can I just get people to coach?
Exactly. And I think, Rob, personally, they have to experience it. They have to have a coach, have gone through it and gone, wow, that was amazing. Because if you've never been coached, and I'm teaching you how to coach others, you're never truly going to know the impact unless you've been on the other end of it. So I always encourage the coaches as well. Have you got a coach? Have you got a supervisor? Who's coaching you? What does that look like? Because I think that's where the magic happens. So I would encourage them to do that. But I believe now I've got enough ambassadors around the business, all with their paintbrushes, splat, 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 splat everywhere.
I'm keeping that one now. I'm nicking it as well. You'll see me talking about that. I'll tag you in it. Don't worry.
Take it. I haven't trademarked it. It's all yours.
It's like, but I think you're right. So when that thing you said earlier, there's always got to be what's in it for me. And too often we sit back, and I say like the royal we, the kind of HR and OD and L&D communities, we sit back and go, right, how can I try and sell this to them? What is the what's in it for me that they've got in their mind? What do I need to pitch? And instead, bring them in and let them experience it. You've actually awoken an idea in mind or thought in my mind that I was like, all over getting little Amazon Echoes around the house. Love it. I'm the right little techie guy. One of them and like control my lights and everything sorted. It can make me tea if it wants to, but I'm still training it to do that. But then my wife's going, what's the point of these? What's the point? I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't want it. Why do I need it? It's another thing in my life. It's another complication. And you have to find the hook. And sometimes it's not about what you would use it for and your benefit, going back to where we started this conversation, not what you think, what's in it for them and how might they use it. And I just said, and I won't say the name of the Echo assistant because I've got one in the office that'll start speaking at me. But you say, I just got my wife and said, sit down and just tell it to play Pink.
Yeah.
All right, play Pink. Suddenly started playing a Pink song, and the look on her face was like, these aren't going back. This is now my life changed. The benefit was there because they lived it. They did it. They didn't sit in front of a PowerPoint presentation of me saying what the benefits of using an Echo were.
Mhm.
It wasn't me trying to push it on them everywhere they looked. It was just sit down and you get your benefit from it, and then you will start spreading that message.
Exactly. You couldn't have said it better myself, Rob. What I call it is, it's an experience. So people go on a training course. I don't. I take you through an experience. So you remember that saying, people will forget what you've said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. I make them feel connected to the bigger picture, connected to their purpose, connected to who they are as an individual, as a professional, a father, a mother, a brother, whatever, as a leader. And I get them to, I never tell people how to think, right? What I do is I present a model, I present a thought, and then we discuss it. And I let them come to their own conclusions, which is usually where we want them to go, right? But I love a healthy debate around it. And I love other people to challenge each other's points of view and thought processes on it.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing, is that I give them an experience where I make them feel valued, heard, listened to, believed in, that I've got their back, that they can achieve anything that they put their mind to. And they come out of that experience of the 3 days just like a renewed vigor for life. I don't sit there and go, you need to do this, you need to learn that, you need to go. That's not my style. There's so many different ways you can influence somebody by just putting a thought or an idea or a tool out there and having a conversation around it.
Yeah.
That helps people come to their own conclusions, because the 3 days in the academy is based around the ESP format, which is a coaching tool as well, which is where we explore the subject, we show the subject, and then we practice the subject. And at no point ever in the 3 days in the academy am I lecturing people or telling people. It's coaching throughout, but they don't even know that they're being coached throughout. Again, it's the experience that you give them. So yeah, exactly. So they have to experience it. Experience coaching, experience the coaching training, but not because it's an experience, it's not training. I don't like calling it training. But also the impact that they have on their coachee when they're out doing their intentional practice, and then their coachee coming to them and going, this has changed my life. So you've got 3 ways, haven't you? You've got them experiencing having a coach, them experiencing the coachee's feedback, and them experiencing the coaching experience via the academy. Are all 3 fundamental things for really getting that mindset changed. And you know, somebody told me to do something, Rob, I'd go, see you later, not doing it. I'm going to do the opposite and take pictures. Yeah. But if somebody goes, hey, let's sit down and think about this idea together, then I'm hooked. Yeah. Don't tell me what to do, include me.
Yeah, and you're not just pushing coaching. Then through what you've been doing, you're creating role models for coaching. You're creating advocates of coaching and enthusiasts for coaching. Mm-hmm. And these people are going to push it further and further. You're allowing them to experience it. You're allowing them to see the benefit for themselves. And what I love there is one of the things that I think a lot of the people listening, it's a really crucial message, because people think of different things when they hear the word coaching. Some people love the idea. Like me and you mentioned the word coaching, we're in, let's have a conversation about it. Some people go, ooh, no, that's when I get a rollicking in a room about my results. I don't like coaching, because that's what their experience is. And sometimes it's about, well, let's not call it that then. Let's experience it. And at the end, it's going back to the blender with the veg again. At the end, we'll tell you, you've just had all the veg. You've just had a coaching session. Wow. Oh, that wasn't what I thought it was then. It is that feeling again. It was awesome. So if we've got people listening to this and they're going, yeah, brilliant, love it, love all this. What's the very first step you think someone should take, whether they're in that kind of HR, OD, L&D position right now, and they've got a few of those challenges, or they've got that kind of mindset of going, I'd love to start to build this, but I know I'm going to get no's left, right, and centre based on the stuff we've been talking about: time, money, effort, resource. What's that first step? Because you're right, it takes a long time. You're not going to do this overnight. What's that first step that maybe they could go about trying to master to start with?
I think the first step is the mindset. So how are you perceiving being told no? How are you perceiving these barriers? And where are they coming from? Because it's a limiting belief, right? We might have a limiting belief that the company's too busy, doesn't have the budget, doesn't have the time. And so you tell yourself that the company doesn't want it. But what if you thought differently?
Yeah.
So it's a limiting belief that I'd want to remove straight away. Like, who says that that's the case? Who's told you there's no budget? Who's told you there's no time? And who's told you there's no resource? Where does that come from? And one of the questions I always ask when I'm challenging limiting beliefs is that true? Is it absolutely true? And if it is true, where's your evidence to support it?
Yeah.
So first of all, I'd challenge the mindset around being told no, because that's a get out of jail card free not to do some work, as far as I'm concerned. So that to me is my favourite bit. Like, who's saying no? Let me go see him, put me in front of him, let me go have a chat with him.
Yeah, bring them in, yeah.
So that's number one, mindset. How are you actually thinking about the problem lying ahead of you? And is it actually a problem, or is it perceived as a problem? How are you thinking? How you're thinking about it is how it will shape and develop. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%.
First of all, mindset. Second of all, if you're going to do it and you're going to do something, why are you doing it? Is it in line with your company's objectives? Are you a purpose-led company? What's the culture like at the minute? Is it command and control? And if you brought coaching in, what benefits would that bring to the business? You need a bit of a business case, a bit of a strategy, a bit of an idea. Because sometimes it's like the iPhone, right? We didn't know we needed the iPhone until we got it. And then we were like, oh shit, I know I didn't know I needed this, but now I do, right?
You know what? You have just like got inside my brain. Because I was going, because like no one needed any more phones. The phone market was completely saturated. There was no time or need for more phones. But it created a load of advocates for iPhones, didn't it? You've got to have this.
Yeah, but nobody knew they needed it, right? Why did we need it? We didn't know that we needed it until we got it, right? It's the same with coaching. So I think sometimes if you are going to be doing something like this, or you want to pitch it to someone or put an idea forward, you've got to understand the vision that you want to create off the back of it. So what do you want to do culturally within your company? Where do you want to put coaching? Why would it fit in? What problems would it solve? Now, people like in the senior leadership realm, like stats and money, right? So if you can maybe say, right, if we did coaching, it would solve this problem and release this much money and we'd be free of this. Put your business case together, talk about it, but also be visionary. Like, have you done your research? What are the trends saying? Like, every time I research coaching, it's like it's the currency of leadership. It's coming. Everybody's buying into it. Have you got your stats? Have you got your research? Do you understand the impact it would make in your environment? How much money you would save for it? And also, you've got to understand that it's not going to be all happy clappy. You're not going to go get your strategy signed off and then off you go and everyone's going to be bought into it. You've got to be prepared for a long, hard slog where you're resilient and you're determined because you know it's the right thing. So you've got to really believe in it.
Yeah.
If you do anything half-assed, you're not that bothered about it. No one else is going to believe in it. And this is, I think, the feedback that I've got, Rob, is the reason that people have bought into it as much as they do is because they see my passion and belief in it.
That's a big thing. That consistency of that passion and the belief in it, 100%. Yeah. It's so important.
Yeah. And if you're kind of half-assed and you're like, well, it might look good or I might get a bonus or a pay rise if I do it, then you're not really doing it for the right reasons. Yeah. So you have to change your mindset. You have to fundamentally believe in what you do. You've got to have the passion, the drive, the determination, and resilience. But you also need to know the vision that you're trying to achieve and how it aligns with your company's objectives and what problems it can solve in your company for you. So they would be my tips.
Love that. And marrying that up to what you said earlier on again, that kind of idea. Can you pilot this? It's not about turning the whole thing into a coaching culture overnight. Who can you work with? Who can you influence? Who have you got that kind of thinks this way already a little bit that you can do some stuff with? Because what becomes really, really good then, to your point about your vision and the results of that and trying to pitch it, is that you get internal case studies. So this is no longer about going to the CEO and going, oh, you know what? This is what Google do, or this is what Netflix are doing, or this is whoever else. We have done it in this organization, in this team, and these were the results. It becomes very real. So I absolutely love that. I guess, I've got a load of notes here now. Loads of notes.
I did put case studies together, Rob, as people came through coaching with me when it was in its infancy. I'd ask them to do case studies with me, and I'd write as many as possible because I was just constantly going, hey, look at this case study, ramming it down someone's throat. Hey, look at that case study, ram it down that person's throat. Because
Real.
It's happening. Like, this is happening. And one of my coaches has just got a major promotion. We've been working together for 3 years. He's got a major promotion, like seriously top drawer. And we've been working together. And I bought him a bottle of champagne and some other bits. I was like, I'm so proud of you. But it's so nice to be involved in helping someone get where they want to be on that career progression. And just one other thing before we go, because I know that time's up soon. He talked about coaching and the guises that coaching coming in. One of my external coaches has got a great phrase, and I'm going to bring it on here. And he says, I give someone a good listening to. How often does someone listen to you when you're talking? And not they're waiting for their opportunity to get in and speak or say something, or they're waiting for their turn to speak. How often are we usually in that space where we can just listen to someone? And I did it the other day, and I was just listening to everything they said, and I thought, this is fascinating. I had no agenda, nothing I wanted to say. I would just gave them a good listening to, and I was like, I love that statement. That's beautiful. That's how our coaching should be, shouldn't it?
It is. It falls into that little bit of it. It's almost like to the phrase, there's almost feeling like it should be a negative connotation to it, like we're going to give someone a good talking to, but it's got a positive word in it. And I think that is such a strong thing. Like things like, who can we blame for the success of this? Like, gets you just thinking very differently. It awakens some passion.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, it's something.
Whose fault is this success?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a good listening to, Rob. Okay, let's do it.
Like it. So, based on all the things we've been talking about, we get to the part where we think of what would be a good title for this episode. I want your ideas first.
I mean, there's so many names you could give it. We could call it giving you a good listening to. We could call it thinking space or thinking environment. We could talk about influence. I don't know, like, it depends what kind of title you want for your YouTube videos, but it could be how to overcome barriers, how to influence and impact in a coaching environment, how to bring coaching into your company. I don't know, help me. There's that many things we could go with on this. Do you want something short and snappy or long and convoluted?
I just want it to be representative. I had the thinking stuff down as well. Something that's stuck in my mind ever since you kind of talked about it was this movement thing, starting a coaching movement. Rather than just a course.
Yeah, let's call it that.
Starting a coaching movement is awesome. You mentioned earlier you're writing a book.
I am.
Can you tell us any more about that yet, or is that all lock and key? Or go for it.
Yeah, no, they just sent me the front cover, and I'm like, yeah, I don't like that shit.
She said no.
The book's called Equation to Confidence. And it's actually come about from me being a coach, because what I noticed as a coach, and you might notice this as well, is a lot of people's root causes are low self-confidence, low self-belief, low self-esteem, imposter syndrome. And it seems to be the underlying thing in any kind of coaching relationship that I have. And on the flip side of that, I'm always getting asked, how are you so confident? What makes you so confident? And I thought, I'm going to write a book. So I called it The Equation to Confidence. I went away and thought, what makes me so confident? Where does it come from? And it comes from 3 things, which is the equation to confidence. It's about knowing yourself. And when I talk about knowing yourself, Rob, I'm talking about, how do your thoughts process? How are you after 1 glass of wine versus 4 glasses of wine? How do you make your decisions? How much do you trust your decision-making process? How well do you know how you're going to respond and react under stress or pressure situations? What's your normal go-to reaction versus you respond? Do you respond or do you? I'm talking about knowing yourself to the nth degree, and there's loads of questions in there. So that's formula 1, knowing yourself. The second one is believing in yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself, why would anybody else?
Yeah.
So we talk about that. And then the third bit of the formula is trusting yourself. Do you trust yourself? Do you trust your decision-making processes? Do you trust the way that if all your mates invited you out on a Tuesday night for beers, but you had an important meeting at 9 o'clock the next morning, do you trust yourself enough to put yourself in a taxi and go home before it gets messy? or do you go F it and you stay out all night and then you miss your meeting the next day? How much trust do you have in yourself about making the right decisions for yourself? So the book kind of goes through all that. There's loads of great models in there, some you'll be familiar with. And I've called it a book for life because who you are now is not the person you were a month ago, and it won't be the person you are in 6 months' time. And so we're constantly evolving as leaders and as people and as professionals. So there's questions in there, and you might look at it and think, I don't know the answer to that. But that's not to say in 6 months' time you're not going to not know the answer because of how life takes you. So you kind of go back and revisit that. So yes, I'm hoping it will help a few people.
Absolutely will. From the sounds of it, and that's some great things in there. I mean, when can we expect this to hit the shelves?
Oh, God knows. I don't know if you've ever worked with having a book coming out, but the publishers are like, oh, it's in the creative process. It'll just be as long as it takes. I'm like, I want timelines and deadlines.
Exactly. And you'll get the. You mean you're saying no to you?
I know, right? I'm like, you're making me mad.
So coming, always say at this moment in time is then coming to a WH Smith in an airport lounge near you soon.
Exactly. I'll send you a copy when it comes out, Rob. Don't you worry.
Bless you. And more importantly, are you recording an Audible version? Because I could hear you talk about this stuff all day.
In my Yorkshire accent, yes, hopefully.
Do it. Love it. Absolutely love it. In the meantime, until that book comes out, where if people want to follow you and kind of hear your thoughts on these things and much more, what's the best way to keep up with you?
On LinkedIn. LinkedIn's absolutely fine. Yeah, hit me up on there.
Perfect. I will. I'll include a link to your profile in the notes, and then as and when the book comes out, let me know. Obviously, it'll come flying through the postbox. Obviously, there, but also I'll put a link on there. Then I'll go backwards and put a link into it, so people can benefit from its wisdom. Love
Thank
it.
you. Absolute legend. That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time today. I think so much in there for leaders and non-leaders and everyone to really consider. Been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. It was great to chat to you. What a great way to spend a Friday afternoon.
Absolutely. What a great way to introduce the weekend.
So
now we'll stop the recording and we'll talk about what are we both like after one glass of wine. 4 glasses of wine, because the first one probably isn't that far away on a Friday afternoon. Brilliant. Have a good one. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. See you later. Bye.
So that's it for this episode of the Leadership Untitled podcast. This episode is called Starting a Coaching Movement. Exactly what Adele's doing, and congratulations to her for actually pushing the envelope when it comes to getting people to really think differently about coaching and invest in coaching. Do not say no to Adele. Thank you for joining me, Adele. It's been a great conversation, and thank you to everyone listening too. Please tune in and subscribe, follow for the next episode so you don't miss it, and also take a look at the back catalogue of episodes over 2 seasons so far as well. Until next time, have a great one.